Welcome back, everyone. We are back with a crew of amazing ladies to talk about some topics that might be challenging for us in the workplace, be they of making of other people or challenges of our own making. We're here to talk about it so that you can think about them yourself and reflect on some of the tips and tricks we talk about. So let's get real. Today's topic we collectively thought would be a good one was to show up. How do you show up at work? What is the best way for you to show up? Is it different for you to show up as a female or as an underrepresented person in the workforce? Maybe you're just, a smaller population of the larger group. Whoever you might be, what is the best way for you to show up? Kathleen, I'd love to start with you. What is your story of showing up? Like what has been one of your experiences?
Yeah, I think that's a really good subject for us to start with today. Again, thinking about how we choose to go into every space, whether it's a meeting or we're jumping on a Zoom call, it is our responsibility. And so, us thinking about how are we showing up, kind of talking through how do we want to be there? How's our energy? Kind of dialing into the channel that everybody else is on. And then also elevating each other in the different meetings and spaces we're in, because sometimes we can kind of throw ourselves off, and so kind of saying, okay, here's what's my role today, how can I add to the conversation, and then others that maybe don't have the same energy. Some of us on this call we have lots of energy, but really like, hey Janina, what do you think? Hey Kelsey, what do you think? So really being an ally to elevate others in the meeting, and then us showing up as our whole selves and not bringing any, like the kindness games is all about being kind and caring about others. So, really just being ourselves, managing our energy, and then asking others to speak into the process if we notice that maybe they're not, because all of our voices matter.
I love that. I love that. Janina, I know you had a great story about showing up and just, somehow sometimes how difficult it can be to just show up as yourself. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, absolutely. And Kathleen spoke really beautifully about showing up as our authentic selves. And to continue in that vein, I think a lot of underrepresented feel like they carry experience around of being discriminated against, and it might inform how we show up in new spaces. So my experience was coming in with these prejudices that I expected to be held against me. And now I'm in this amazing workspace. I almost expected that, and I almost reacted before they could even, welcome me in. And so my experience was not every workspace is going to be a toxic one. And yeah, it was an amazing experience to see how it could be. So moving from a negative space and then moving in from that negativity, that previous sector I had been in, and moving into the new corporate space, it was just being allowed to be myself and not be judged on who I like what I am, but who I am.
I love that. I think we as human beings have our own biases, and be they positive or negative, we constantly have to reflect on who we are and what we're doing so that we can show up as our best selves. I love that. Kelsey, I know you recently had an experience as well. I is would you like to share your story of showing up?
Yeah, I think first of all, everybody has spoken very beautifully to the topic. I think it's Coach Kat, when you say that everybody has a seat at the table, totally agree. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind, because we all have preconceived connotations about the workplace or the scenario that you're going into, or you could be intimidated, or you could bring a lot of energy, which you're so spot on when you say that, because me going into the workplace or showing up is can be overwhelming for sure, because when you're high energy, you need to, it's a challenge because you have to meet people where they are so that you're speaking the same language, tone, right? And that's metaphorically same language, but also you're able to listen as much as you are able to talk. I think if you shut the mouth and you listen more than you speak, I think that is really important when showing up too, because sometimes you're faced with oh, you're always high energy, so why are you not today? What's wrong? And then you just assume something's wrong. So I think that's really another important thing, because maybe I'm tired, right? Or maybe I just had a really long drive, or something personal in your life is happening. So I think showing up, being yourself, and sticking to your core and your beliefs and what you're there to do, right? Your task at hand is really important. And I guess the scenario that I could share that I was part of was I was in a meeting room, and I pretty much said the same thing that another person said and completely was overlooked, which is fine, because it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger, right? But it really isn't okay. I showed up, gave my best, put my best foot forward, and tried to solve a problem, and then completely was overlooked. Whether it be I am a female, right? Or I'm a young person, or I'm new to the industry, or whatever it be. That is something that I feel like we're challenged with. So I would just say my experience being the high energy, meeting people where they are, and also just what Coach Kat said, knowing what your task is, or like everybody has a seat at the table. So what do you bring, and what are you bringing in that specific meeting or lunch or whatever?
I love that. I love that. And I think especially like coming in as your authentic self, like you have to come in and you have to show up. But sometimes we put ourselves in a space of saying that I have to show up this specific way. One of the things I think I struggled with early on in my career was I felt like I had to show up like 110%. Like I had to show up more than everyone else because I was a female and I was a minority and I was a first gen immigrant. And so I just had to be the best self. And you end up putting so much pressure on yourself. And I think that like one of my stories I can give is, growing up, I didn't have anyone in my life who was like in the corporate environment who would give me life advice. This is how you show up in a corporate environment. This is how you like get ahead or make connections or go network. And so I would always try to overcompensate for that. And I think you as an individual really have to reflect on yourself and think about, how is everybody else showing up? Is everyone else showing up to 100% and I'm putting so much more effort in that I'm exhausting myself because of the way that I'm showing up? And so I'll now go into kind of the tip giving. I think for you as an individual, like do some reflection and think about how is the best way for you to show up, or what is the best way for you to show up, and what is going to be the best for you in the future, right? Like be kind to yourself in the present and do the things that will benefit your future self. Like that is going to be the best thing over and over again. And talk to people, ask people how I'm showing up. Is it the best way? Am I showing up as my best self, or am I showing up as someone who's not a representation of who I am? Because those closest to you will be honest with you. And those who really care and love about you will be honest to you, and they will tell you exactly what you need to know, and not just what you need to hear. So I think I'll pop it over to Janina. Do you have any tips for people? Like how can they show up? Like what is the best way?
Oh, personally, I'm going to draw my own experience. I think in order to show up authentically, you need to know who you are, and you need to know your inherent value has nothing to do with how other people reflect you, because very often when they make you feel bad, it's about them, not about you. So, in order to express your brilliance at work, allow other people to have their biases, but don't react to it. And secondly, quieten the anxiety of being judged. Allow it to show up, acknowledge it, and then let it go. And then just be your own bad self. Because other people will look for something to pick at. They will look to, maybe break you down. But I'm also going to touch on something that allies can do, because I know that that's something we're going to talk about. But allies can create a psychologically safe space to thrive and everybody to show up. So let people be, know who you are, and perform to your best ability. And thank you to those allies who have created a psychologically safe space and held everybody else and removed that so it can be a place to thrive. So those are my tips.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Gina. I think it's really important to share that it's something that you can do, but it's also something that allies can do as well. Kelsey, what are some tips that you'd like to give to people on how they can show up?
That was extremely well said, Janina. I echo a lot, if not everything, of what you said. That was amazing. I think that definitely you're in life, whatever you do, you're building your own brand, right? Whether you know it or not. So stick to the brand of you, right? Don't change for other people. That is probably my biggest piece of advice. Because to Janina's point, people are going to try to tear you down, or there are going to be people who elevate you and embrace those people because they're really, they're in it to help you, right? Or they see something in you that maybe you don't see yourself. So I think that my piece of advice would be to stick to yourself, stick to your core, and what you want to be represented for and what you want to stand for as an individual, and then an individual in the workplace, right? They're related. And then just allow others to have a seat at the table, because sometimes you get really excited. Well, speaking from experience, if you get really excited, you can talk, but then there are other people who, I think, Coach Kat, you mentioned this. There are people who you need to give an opportunity to speak because they like to be called on, or they don't feel like they're part of the puzzle. So I think just acknowledging that, and then also just realizing that everybody has something to bring to the table. So try to lift each other up.
I love that. I think lifting each other up especially is like one of the best tips that we can give. Coach Kat, I mean, best for last.
Dial into the channel that others are on. Don't take on other people's pain and triggers, because then that actually blocks your brilliance, because then you cannot physically and emotionally and energy wise show up. And we've all said it about energy. We have to self-regulate and remain constant in every space that we are in. The deep lows and deep highs, people can't hear us, it's too much noise. So be your best self, remain constant, and make sure that you allow others to have a voice at the table. So
I love that. I love that. You know, especially like being able to self-regulate, I think is really important because that's not only great for showing up, but it's also great for your resilience. And you guys know how much I love talking about resilience. So, Coach Kat, what can allies do? What can allies do to help us show up, especially when they see someone who's not showing up to the best of their abilities?
yeah, so from my experience in past situations, what's most helpful is have somebody that, say, you're in a meeting with, and I used to call it sandwich approach. We would say, hey, here's what you did well. Here's one or two things you need to think about next time when coming into whatever space you're in. And here's one thing that you've done well. That way, you're supporting them, you're giving them feedback, and you're also giving them a safe space. And then if someone you know that you're in a room with, if you notice they're quiet, and some of us who are high energy who love to talk, we lower our energy and we say something like, hey, Janina, what do you think? You know, you've got a lot of really great experience around X, Y, and Z. Would love to hear you. So that's what allies can do. We can support each other and not fill the room all the time.
I think that is a fantastic tip to give to our allies. Janina, what do you think? Is there something that our allies can do to really help us show up?
Um, I think not only leading by example, like not to be a boss, but to also understand your team before you try and lead them. So get to know them all individually and understand everybody's strengths, but also areas of improvement. And in that way, you can draw on the strengths of the people that you are looking to lead. And allies can also be in our team. So treat everybody the same, and don't, yeah, just educate yourself on what biases are, so you can understand how not to discriminate. Yeah,
Because we're all humans.
yeah,
All humans. We are all humans.
We all got gifts.
Yeah, we have to shine somehow, right? And we need our allies to help us shine because sometimes we just don't know how. We just don't know how to shine. And Kelsey, I'd love to hear an example from you because you are that like really great, like loud, bubbly personality. Like, how do you think that an ally can help show up for you, considering you do have like a very loud voice, but sometimes it might be different. Sometimes a different thing is necessary. What can an ally do to help someone with a very vivacious personality kind of understand what's the best way to show up?
Yeah, um, I think an ally could just, I guess, sort of recognize everybody is different for one, but also kind of like give them self time to speak, because I like, coming from high energy, you'll realize that you're talking too much, right? But then kind of slow you down. Sometimes you need people to slow you down, because if you're excited about something, or if you're just going, um it's good for people that have a lot of energy to be kind of brought back to center with people who do not have much energy, or who are introverted that have amazing ideas, but introvert, extrovert, I think just kind of being slowed down in the sense where you're being brought back to the table if you're getting crazy, I think that, if that makes sense,
It
kind of,
does.
yeah, being centered, sort of.
Yeah, it goes back to being, we can choose to be a thermostat or we can choose to be a thermometer in whatever space we come into. And I have been both, which of course, not helpful.
Wow, that you can choose to be a thermostat or you can choose to be a thermometer. I love that analogy. I think that is such a great way to showcase, you can either control the way that you are, or you can just feel the room and see like if that is something that you can match. So you kind of choose your own adventure, right? I think a tip from me in terms of how I'd love for allies to show up would be to help us recognize our shortcomings, help us recognize where we're doing really good. I think one of the things that I frequently notice is people have made assumptions. They make assumptions that women in the room or underrepresented voices know how to do something or know how the field works, and I think sometimes getting those tips from people who may have backdoor knowledge of like, hey, this is kind of how the politics is working right now. Maybe don't jump on that landmine, or maybe like talk about these things, is I think so important, because a lot of people don't build those relationships, right? They don't build those relationships. They don't know how to figure out, what is the environment around me right now. So the more that you can help educate us, I think it's really going to help us show up in the best way possible. So there you have it, folks. This was our episode on how to show up. Let us know if you think we hit the mark, or if you have other tips and tricks that you'd like to share with other people on showing up. Be you a person who is a woman or a man or whatever you are, we don't care. Tell us what you think and let us know what you'd like us to talk about next time, because we're here to get real. Until next time.